Hello, everyone. My name is Serhatcan, and today I'm going to talk about why global infrastructure matters and how AWS helped us. But before we begin, I'd like to remind you that this talk is a level 100 to 200, known as introduction level. So if you're an expert on AWS, this talk may not be for you. But if you are new to AWS, if you are looking forward to learn more about how the underlying infrastructure of AWS help us, this talk is going to be helpful for you. As we begin, I'd like to first talk a little bit about why we choose cloud today. It's not just AWS, but if you want to go to cloud, usually a lot of people will say that we choose cloud because it helps us move faster, ship faster. It is important, is part of the deal, but the reason we move to the cloud is not just about becoming faster. It's about cloud helping us create customer value with an affordable price. And price, the cost of these things always matter, because at the end, we are doing this cloud thing to optimize our costs and create customer value. So when we say creating customer value, there is this formula: perceived value equals to perceived benefits divided by cost. So if you look at this formula, you will realize that costs increasing will decrease the perceived value of the customers. So obviously we want to keep the cost at an acceptable level. But as you can see, the cost is an important one, but it's only part of the equation. The other one is perceived benefits. So push for more benefits, we can still increase our perceived value. So the angle is we want to minimize costs, but we also want to increase our perceived benefits. So our customers can get the most out of our product or service. So how does the cloud helps us increase perceived benefits of our product? So there are a lot of ways, and usually, we think about adding more features, but part of the deal is also non-functional requirements like reliability or availability of our applications, performance of our applications. When we think about it, how does cloud enables this? Reliable infrastructure, this kind of additional benefits for our customers. The one that is the most fundamental to all of this is the global infrastructure. We are going to talk about the global infrastructure for the rest of the presentation, but before we begin, I want to talk a little bit about myself. So my name is Serhatcan again, and I'm a technical evangelist at Atlassian. I'm still mostly working on the Genie product. And previously, for the last 4 years, I was a developer. I was a technical evangelist at Genie. So I've been working with Atlassian team for the last almost 2 years now. And I am an AWS community hero since 2019. And I'm also helping DevOps Days organization globally. I'm part of the core team, DevOps Days core team. And I'm from Turkey, so I'm doing a lot of local community stuff in Turkey as well. So if you somehow come to Turkey, I'm organizing, and I know a lot of other folks as well. So I'm organizing DevOps Turkey meetup and Cloud and Service Turkey meetup. And you can just reach out to me, even if it's online. If you want to talk for our local community, I'd be happy to arrange a talk. And going back to the global infrastructures, I want to give you an example. There are ways that you can have cars. One way is obviously you can purchase one car. At first point, this might seem like you are paying less overall, or you kind of have the option to do some customizations, whatever. But over the long run, and especially if you are a global company, if you need to have cars, and the maintenance work, the insurance, whatever, it's going to cost you a lot more. But in real world, businesses go with these global brands that will rent cars. Obviously, the reason that almost all of the businesses choose these rental cars instead of buying their own cars is simple. They don't want to deal with these, different state regulations. They don't want to wait, for 5 years, 10 years before upgrading their cars. They don't want to deal with selling their car, purchasing the car, insurance companies. They don't want to deal with the financial side of things one by one. It's all complicated enterprise. Usually it's not part of their original product, serving their original value to their customers. So they don't want to deal with this. They just want to go from place A to B. They also want to have the option to, select this, basic car versus luxury car, depending on maybe the customer. If you work with a rental company, they provide all of these to you. And if you want to cancel after a year, you can just do that if it's in your contract. Really easy to do all of these operational things and not worry about all of the details. And the cloud is the same. We don't want to have one data center deal with all this purchasing, long-term commitments, financial side of things, putting the purchase ticket to all these servers and plug them into your data center, whatever. Or even if you don't own the data center, if you're just working with a local data center provider, then they may be helpful in some cases. But if you are selling to global, for example, it will be really hard to expand their data center if you somehow get a lot of requests and need to scale. Or if you need some sort of different machine that you want to run, for example, some machine learning load, and you need that specific machine, and it's going to cost you, I don't know, tens of thousands of dollars to bring that machine in, and maybe you only need that for a couple of hours. So you don't want to buy from that specific data center. You want to have this option. You don't want to give long-term commitments, and this is only possible if your service provider, if your cloud provider have global infrastructure. When we say these data centers, it's not just data centers. You need to know some terminology. So the first one is region. In AWS, a region represents a physical location around the world with a cluster of data centers. For example, there is a region in Ohio, there is a region in Oregon, there is a region in Tokyo, there is a region in Germany. So these are physical locations around the world. They have cluster of data centers. And these data centers are called availability zones. This is important. You will hear this a lot if you use AWS. These regions consists of multiple availability zones. So there are different data centers within a region. The important part is these availability zones are interconnected through high bandwidth and low latency networking. These availability zones are separated from each other. They have some distance just to avoid some problems related to electricity, some natural disaster, whatever. In case something happens in one of these data centers, the rest of them are working correct. And they're interconnected. So if you are running your application, the default expectation is you run them in multiple availability zones, so they kind of work like in the same data center. They are fast, but they also have some resiliency. The third one is, this is a really new one. They just announced this last year. So local zone is here because some customers want to run latency sensitive portions of their applications. They want to run these part of their applications local to end users. In some cases, CDNs, content delivery networks, will not be enough. So right now, this is only available in Los Angeles. As you can imagine, the film and this industry is there. So this is pretty useful for them. And local zones, even though they're not, as close as each other like availability zones, they still have a direct connect with the connected region. In a simple form, an AWS region consists of 2 or more availability zones. As you can see, this is like an AWS region. There is 2 AWS zones, and they are separated availability zones, and they're separated from each other. There can be more. Right now, AWS has 24 regions throughout the world, and they also have 76 availability zones, and they're increasing this number every year. So if you are watching this talk, maybe a year from now, you might see this number increase. Local zone has direct connection to other availability zones, but it is not in the same place. It has some distance, and it doesn't have a lot of services as the other availability zones, but it has the most fundamental and most used services in there. So I'm not going into the details because it's still not widely used. But if you want to run your application in Los Angeles somehow, right now you can use local zones, and it's enabled by default in your account. So I'm gonna do one little quick test. So the question is, which AWS region has the most availability zones? US East, Northern Virginia, aka US East 1, US East Ohio region, US East 2, US West, Northern California region, aka US West 1, and Germany, Frankfurt region, EU Central 1. So I will wait just five seconds. So the answer is, I think most of you got it right if you have some AWS knowledge. So the answer is US East 1, obviously, because that's the default region, that's the first region, right? It has 6 availability zones, and the closest one has 4 availability zones, so it's the biggest one. And if you are doing something on cloud, and if you don't change your region, US East 1 is your default region. So now we talked about region, what a region is, what an availability zone is, what a local zone is. Now let's talk a little bit about why these things matters. An important part of our journey at Opsgenie, because I want to give some real life examples. But first, a famous quote. So cloud doesn't matter if your users can see their cat pictures, right? I like this quote, because sometimes we are just, scrolling through Instagram, whatever. If Instagram has some problems, the world goes crazy, but all they can see probably their friends' pictures, whatever. It's probably not that big of a deal, but people are, right now are so accustomed to have this, online presence all the time. They need their apps services running all the time. And if this gets much critical, if you are running a business to business service, if your customers depends on you. So with that, I want to mention a little bit about Opsgenie, just so you know that we have critical operation, and so you can understand why global infrastructure matters to us. So we are running on AWS since our beginning, since 2012, since Opsgenie born. And we offer our customers reliable alerting and incident management. So if they have problems with their servers, if they have problems with their applications, whatever, then we collect all these different alerts from all these different monitoring systems, so you can combine them, make them suitable for your developers, whatever, and send them through multiple notification channels to your developers. So it's a critical operation because it is the product that let your developers know that something is happening with your system. So you don't want Opsgenie to be down because you can't know your services aren't running properly or not if you can't get that alert. So that is why from the beginning we had multiple availability zone set up. But then because some of our customers requested, we went for multi-region setup. And we are using a lot of different AWS services, not just using EC2 or AKS. We are using SQS and DynamoDB heavily. DynamoDB is our main database. We are using SQS. We are using also heavily Kinesis, EC2. A lot of our applications still run on EC2. We are using Lambda. We are using simple notification service as well, especially between application to application communications. We talked about reliability a little bit, but reliability means being trustworthy or of performing consistently well. So availability is a big part of reliability. Obviously, reliable applications, the first thing you would expect is that they are available, they are working fine, you can access them. And the second one is performance. They need to have consistent performance that will, satisfy their users. So reliability is an important part of our applications, our products. When you go to the cloud, the first thing that you need to do if you want your applications to be reliable, is to deploy your applications, operate your applications on multiple availability zones. So you need to architect your applications to run on multiple availability zones. So the cloud doesn't promise running a machine 24/7 without any problems. In fact, AWS always promotes building for failure, and they suggest practicing practices like chaos engineering. And AWS gives you the infrastructure and low latency networking and failover capabilities, so you can architect your applications to realize your needs. And the first step is, again, architecting for multiple available zones. So this enables automatic failover without interruption, and it is the foundation behind fault-tolerant applications on the cloud. So, for example, almost all critical applications in Opsgenie run on EC2 machines on production for so long. So even if the app didn't get a lot of requests, we still had 3 available zones. This is important to ensure the improved continuity of our applications. And the difference is between 3 machines running in one availability zone versus 3 machines running in multiple availability zones, 3 availability zones, is practical life and death for your applications. If something happens, if your application is running on multiple availability zones, you can continue to run without any problems. So it is really important. What if you have higher availability requirements? What if you need to consider a region-wide failure? These things don't happen most of the time, but when they do, they usually take longer than most of the failures. Let me start by telling you that you probably are not Netflix. You probably know Netflix running multiple regions. They had all these chaos things because they needed to invest to make these things right. And you probably are not Opsgenie. Our customers expect this high reliability from us, and this is part of the deal. But even if this is the case, probably you need to think about twice before choosing region-wide failover mechanisms. They're really hard to implement and maintain. And when you decide to go region-wide failover mechanisms, having a global infrastructure and built-in region-wide replication support for many services matters so much. There are usually like 2 ways. One is having a backup region. This means nothing runs on actively on multi-region, but you keep everything ready to be launched in another region just in case. Right now we are running in US West 2. If something happens, we have all these, everything ready in US West 1. Most of the EC2s are not running, maybe just in case you keep some EC2 machines up and running, but not all. So it is a backup, it's not running actively. So the other option is active-active approach. So let's say US West 1 and US West 2 is handling requests at the same time. All your apps and databases run on multiple regions, but it's not easy. It requires a lot of maturity in your company. And obviously, as I mentioned, one of the big deal breakers is in these type of architectures is latency. So most applications won't be able to support the required quality of service if they access data across multiple regions. And that's why most companies start with having a backup failover region instead of active-active approach. These are just, some of the considerations you have to account for when architecting this kind of systems. Let's take a quick look at how this works in real life. So when we decided to deploy Opsgenie to another region as a backup, we needed to replicate our data in DynamoDB tables in real time. This was over 2 years ago. So we spent a lot of time architecting a solution that replicates data, resolves conflicts, and migrates and updates data in multi-region for our DynamoDB tables. Also, I remember the time when AWS announced DynamoDB global tables. So AWS basically started to offer the exact same thing we developed internally as a solution. And we were really furious with not AWS actually, ourselves, because a lesson learned, you need to talk with your account managers more, learn about the upcoming features so you don't build the same thing and invest in those things. Obviously, it is useful in some ways. Your company had this knowledge now, but still it's a lot of time wasted for a startup. Our work for building a failure region consisted of also other services, replicating S3 buckets, Lambda functions, SNS topics, and more. And for some managed tools like DynamoDB right now, thanks to global tables, things are easier. Some services like S3 and EC2 also are relatively easy and cheap to replicate. When you need region-wide failover, you realize the importance of having access to this great global infrastructure with high-speed networking and bandwidth. Also, they're close to each other. And you also realize the importance of your cloud provider's capabilities. So the last one is you can deploy your applications to another region with minimal installation and operational cost. And a lot of customers in EU, especially in Germany, so they started asking a way to keep their data within EU because of the data restrictions. They didn't want to keep their data in US. So it didn't take for our SRE team to deploy our apps to another region. And so the key was to find a region that offered the same services as our original region, US West 2, as an old and mature one. Frankfurt region had everything we needed. So after a few weeks, we were operating in Europe, and we were able to offer the same level of quality, scalability, and reliability. It didn't take much. Thanks to this global infrastructure, we didn't have to make any upfront commitment. We just needed to deploy our application using our same tools. So this was another proof of the power of having access to this kind of great global infrastructure. So just to wrap up how AWS infrastructure help us throughout our journey at Opsgenie. So operating always on services requires deploying apps to multiple data centers with high-speed networking and bandwidth. And most regions of AWS offer great support for high-speed networking and bandwidth between multiple availability zones, so you can add that. And some critical operations, if you have really high reliability requirements, you might need region-wide failover mechanisms. And AWS has built-in features for different services, and they have supporting tools for architecting such resilient systems. Some cases, I know that if you are going global, you might encounter this. You need to deploy your applications in other regions because of data restrictions and all. So having access to global infrastructure makes this really easy for cloud native companies. And just as I wrap up, so opportunities are endless for you and your company. And today you don't know if your users will require you to have their data in their own country, if they need more strict availability or performance requirements. The world is bigger than you think. So you might, even if you don't think you are going to need this, you might require such global infrastructure. And it's really helpful when you do because you don't spend a lot of time and money. And at the same time, the world is smaller than most of us think. Like your users are now only one click away from you to complain about your availability or choose your competitor. There are always alternatives now. So it's important to choose wisely, and definitely experience and capabilities of your cloud providers matters. So if you are looking forward to learn more, you might want to take a look at these topics as well, like edge locations, direct connect locations, VPC, subnets, internet gateways, route and labels. These are some of the fundamentals of AWS infrastructure that you might want to look at. So thank you very much for having me today. So if you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter or you can add me on LinkedIn. So I'll be happy to connect with you. Thank you very much again. Hope you stay safe.